evidence of the waste of scarce resources can be seen in the many needless political appointees at the presidency. In the midst of the worst economic crisis in living memory, the president continues to make ridiculous and superfluous appointments at the presidency, such as the following: Youth Ambassador for Diaspora Affairs, Policy Associate, Chief Executive of Public Sector Reforms, Overseer of the National Cathedral, Church Relations Manager, Diaspora Church Mobilization Officer, Policy and Coordinator Analyst, Focal Person, La Francophonie, Technical Director, La Francophonie, Coordinator, Special Development Initiative Secretariat, Director of Special Projects, Manager of Operations and Programs, 5 Technical Communication Assistants, Technical Advisor, Zongo Development Authority, 2 Technical Advisors, Special Development Initiative Secretariat, Technical Advisor, Political Affairs, Presidential Staffer, NAPCO, Office Management Executive Associate, Technical Director to the Presidential Advisor on Media, and Data Manager.
True State of the Nation's address. How true? We'll get some answers to those questions. You're watching GTV Breakfast. My name is Kafri Day. One of my regular Tuesday morning panelists is here with me, the Director General for the Internal Audit Agency, Dr. Eric Odro Assign. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good to have you. Love the red shirt.
Thanks.
And sitting next to him is a member of the Communication and Legal Team of the National Democratic Congress, the Eduji Tamaklo. Good morning, sir.
Good morning,
Good to have you here.
And good morning to Doc.
Indeed. All righty. So we're going to dive straight into that news, which is the big headline, and that's why we have you here, Eduji. So yesterday, your national chairman delivered what he described, or your party has described as a true state of the nation's address. What's wrong with the one that the president gave a couple of days back?
Okay, so once again, good morning to your good self, and good morning to Doc, and good morning to our cherished viewers. The reason for yesterday's true State of the Nation address is born out from what we obviously consider is the attempt by the president to massage the obvious state of the nation now. Now, we believe that the president had a glorious opportunity, as it were, first to carry Ghanaians along and to demonstrate that he's the leader in crisis. But what he decided to do rather is to massage the reality and invariably exposed himself as a man living in a different country other than Ghana. At the time he was delivering the State of the Nation address, this country had defaulted on several commitments in terms of its loan commitment to various international agencies. One would have expected that the president would demonstrate a certain leadership by first taking responsibility for the mess that this country finds itself. Because there's nothing wrong as a leader in admitting that by reason of my policy choices, I put the country in a very precarious situation, and then call for a national conversation on how to reset and how to restore the country. That we consider completely lacking in the statement delivered by the president. More importantly, our president thought that the best strategy for him was to blame external factors for the problem in the country, other than what he himself had contributed to create the mess. Why do we say so? We are dealing with a country or a government which is the most resourced since 1992. The most resourced administration since 1992. If you look at the volume or the envelope of financial resources available to the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia administration and the mess or bankrupt state that they have put this country, it will beat your mind. Look, we are talking about an administration that in the space of 6 years, they have raked in revenue minus oil 298 billion Ghana cedis. That's how much revenue they have raked in. Kafi, do you know that from 2009 to 2016, the volume of financial resources available to the Mills Mahama administration, comprising taxes, loans, grants, was 248 billion Ghana cedis in 8 years. Just within the period of 6 years, revenue alone is 298 billion. So that's more than how much in 8 years the Mills Mahama administration got in all. This 298 billion Ghana cedis, Kafui, I'm putting out, is minus the loans we have acquired. Mm-hmm. It's minus the grants we have obtained. So if you put all together, this administration had gotten in excess of 800 billion Ghana cedis. And what is their record? Abysmal. This is an administration that in 6 years, they are struggling to put up one hospital project. A project Akufo-Addo had cast sought for and completed in 6 years. This is an administration that by the time they came, John Mahama had already procured and made available money for Pokwasi interchange. The record is there. Had already gotten the Indian Exim Bank to provide money to do the Tema in Pakadan railway line. All those heavy liftings had already been done for you. So you are like a pampered child. Everything has been done for you. Then when your father had put you in school, done everything for you, now you come back telling your father that I'm bankrupt. So I need your pension in order to survive as a child.
So your argument is that what the president delivered on the 8th of March was not the true state.
It was completely not the state of the nation.
Then how come your MPs in Parliament actually debated that State of the Nation's address?
And so by the debates, if you recall, the closing conversation by the Honorable Ato Forson, the minority leader, he exposed the president to these realities. That when the president came and said, look, I've constructed more roads than any government since 1992, the president was obviously peddling falsehood. Because when you say road construction and that you have constructed roads, you cannot come and put data on resealing, regraveling, and say you have constructed road. No, Mr. President. Whoever gave him that data obviously didn't do him good, because the reality does not correspond with it.
Let me quote you what the president said towards the end of his State of the Nation's address on the 8th of March. He said,
yes, a
few days ago, he said, Mr. Speaker, 66 years since our independence, Ghana has taken steady strides to become a more developed country. The Ghana of 57 is not the Ghana of 2023. We've come a long way since the days of our 6 million population, with very few amenities for its people, to today's population of 32 million people, with a growing stock of modern infrastructure, spanning drones to supply our medicines, to the Ghana card, which identifies each of us proudly as a proud Ghanaian. As president, I have championed the innovation of policies and the execution of projects that have helped improve the quality of life of the Ghanaian people. And God willing, I'll continue on a path that brings the most benefit to the people of Ghana. Let me just end it briefly. He said, things may be dire today, and you've painted the picture. But the president says, nonetheless, we must count our blessings. Our petrol stations have fuel, and we've been spared long, winding queues to fuel our vehicles. Our markets and shops are, by the grace of God, well stocked. We've not been faced with the prospect of rationing of basic necessities such as fruits and vegetables. Our children's schooling has not been interrupted. We've continued to provide free SHS, free TVET, and paid teacher and nursing training allowances. Our electricity supply has been consistent. We've been spared the hardship of doomsor during such a trying time. Our country continues to be stable and at peace. And just briefly, before I end it, and I'll get back to you, throughout our history, there are many instances of nations going through periods where dark clouds have created shadows that momentarily shield and yearn for vision from sight. Such moments should not be the ones in which despair takes over. Such moments call for strength of character, sense of purpose, and an abiding commitment to the general good. And finally, he said, fellow Ghanaians, let's believe in ourselves and in our capacity to overcome the problems that are before us. This is a phrase, and with every fiber of my being, I'm certain that this too shall pass. We've done it before, and we will do it again. The president strikes what seems to me as a note of hope, which contrasts with the doom and gloom scenario that you paint. He wants to give hope. You are talking about the problems. Is that a fair comparison?
You see, it's not an issue of giving hope. There must be a foundation on which that hope should be built on. Our president, by way of his posturing, does not, first of all, speak to the reality. Look, and I recall this conversation vividly. If you recall when the MPP were in opposition, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, then running mate, has something that he usually would say, that he had worked in the Bank of Ghana before, and that we have a lot of money, and that the money is here, and that it is reckless borrowing that had brought this country to where it is. Do you know why we had to go into all this debt restructuring? Because of the unbridled borrowing undertaken by this administration. Why do I say so? In 8 years of Mills Mahama, total Eurobond receipt was $3.5 billion in 8 years. In the course of just 6 years, total Eurobond receipt is $11 billion. And this $11 billion is minus the 2017 2.25 Franklin Templeton bond. So if you put all together, the bond receipt alone is $11 billion in the course of just 6 years. When you put yourself in such precarious situation, it is your policy choices. And so the reason why today we are having to run to the IMF cap in hand is simply because, one, there's no fiscal space, because the amount of money we are using to service our public debt is the highest since 1992. By December 2016, when the NDC left office, our interest payment and amortization was just 11 billion Ghana cedis. Today, for the last count, we did 53 billion Ghana cedis in interest payment and amortization. Do you know that for the first time, we are having to deal with interest rates of 52%, the highest after 1983. That is the scorecard of Mr. Akufo-Addo.
What do you want him to do? What do you expect his response to be after listening to your true State of the Nation address?
Revise what he presented and be candid with the people of this country. And I'm happy Prof. Doc is here. For instance, one of the things the president touched on was the audit on the COVID-19. You do know that when the NDC minority raised the issue of auditing COVID-19 expenses, right? The speaker admitted a private member motion from Kesela Tofosin, then ranking on finance, right? Immediately the speaker traveled. What happened? The MPP minority, when Joe Wise presided.
Who's Joe Wise?
Joe Sewusu, okay. The deputy, the first deputy.
All right.
So what they did was to reverse what Speaker Bagbe did. Do you know what got this government to finally agree to audit COVID-19 expenses? The IMF. They said, look, we will not sit down with you on an IMF program unless you audit COVID-19 expenses. So it was a condition. But the president, in presenting the State of the Nation address, presented to us that he voluntarily allowed for the audit of the COVID expenses.
Let me quote something that the president said in connection with the economy and just touching on what you have said. He said, and I quote, "As such, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a departure from the usual format of messages of State of the Nation and concentrate predominantly on the economy, which will enable me also to make some statements about the state of agriculture, education, energy, health, infrastructure." What else? He says, I've said, and many others, including the managing director of the IMF, have said that our economy was doing well until COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine took us off course. Maybe because of the severity of the present difficulties, or maybe because it suits their preconceived agenda, some people are unwilling to accept that we were on a good trajectory until the arrival of COVID-19. The Ghanaian people, however, accepted this proposition as evidenced in the results of the 2020 presidential election, which were unanimously endorsed and upheld by the 7-member panel of the Supreme Court. The president is basically saying that Ghana was doing well until COVID-19 struck at the end of 2019. And you have a preconceived agenda to
that's why I
paint it
say
otherwise.
Our president is living in a different world. He postures differently when he's talking to us. Look, I'm reading page 10 of the IMF Article 2 review of Ghana for 2019, not 2020, before COVID, so that we can put matters in proper context. Because, and so this is what the IMF is saying.
2019.
In 2019, that's paragraph 12. Balance of risk is, however, tilted towards downside, into bracket RAM matrix. And it says, the political budget cycle remains critical risk by 2019. And I'll forward it to you. So the IMF, in its Article 2, because remember that we're under an IMF program in 2017, 2018 to 2019, the one H.E. John Dramani Mahama entered into. So when we were exiting by 2019, they did a review, which is the Article 2 review. In that report, they had already posted that Ghana remains at a very critical risk, and now proceeded to say that along with Ghana's exposure to investor sentiment, given the large financial needs and lower external buffers.
What is that in English?
In English, you see, for your external, you need what you call shock absorbers for the economy. So it is the shock absorbers. When something happens external, it is the shock that cushions you to keep floating. The IMF, by 2019, had already given the indication that your numbers were looking terrible.
So why did the president now tell the House on 20th February?
That is why I am saying that.
No. In 2020 February, this is from his own State of the Nation address for this year. He says, and I quote, "Mr. Speaker, in 3 years, we've reduced inflation to its lowest level, 7.8% in January 2020, just before COVID hit, since 1992. For the first time in over 40 years, we've had a fiscal deficit below 5% of GDP for 3 years in a row."
That's false.
It's false?
False.
What is the truth?
So, you see, in 2020, when COVID struck, the president had to apply for the rapid credit facility by the IMF. So they had to present a report. When they presented the report, they gave 7.2% as the budget deficit. Do you know what the president had been doing? They had passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which requires that you cannot do a deficit beyond 5%. It will provide the basis to censure the finance minister. So they were doing the below the line reporting.
English again.
So the below the line means that they will strategically say that, okay, these are our expenditure that gives us 5%, right? But this A, B, C, D expenditure will not treat it as a normal expenditure. So for instance, they have spent 25 billion on banking sector cleanup. Is it not expenditure? Then the man says, I'm treating it as below the line. How do you do that? So, creative accounting. Creatively, the president takes certain expenditure out. But you see, now when they needed the money from the IMF, they had to present the true state of the economy. So when they went to the IMF for the rapid credit facility, they provided a budget deficit of 7.2%. Contrary to what he is saying.
The 5% that
Yes,
you talked about.
because at that point, they needed to provide the IMF how much they spent on the banking sector cleanup, among other expenditure, putting the budget deficit at 7.2%. So quite clearly, when the president said in the State of his Nation address that we're doing a budget deficit of 5%, he was peddling an obvious falsehood. But you see, the IMF report that I was reading, Kafui, let me just, I wish I could conclude. Because the IMF by 2019 had already said that our debt distress was already on the high. Remember that Mr. Akufo-Addo took the economy at the point where our debt to GDP ratio was 56%. By debt to GDP ratio, we are basically looking at your public debt as a percentage of your overall productivity within the year. And we're doing 56% by December 2016. Do you know that today, as we speak, and at the time the president was presenting the State of the Nation address, we are doing 103%. But look at the posturing of the president and his finance managers. Do you know what they have been doing? The below the line treatment. They went for Sino-Hydro. You remember? When they went for the Sino-Hydro, the NDC said, look, treat it as part of our public loan. As usual, Bawumia came and said, oh, NDC people don't read. But we have seen the framework agreement. And you see interest rate and others. I have never seen a barter arrangement where interest rate is introduced. Because for barter, it is like for like. So do you know, today, by June, the Sino-Hydro deal is coming to an end. But the representation was that it was going to be barter. So they'll construct road, and then we'll use our bauxite to pay. Correct. So we'll process the bauxite, create an escrow. The receivables will be put in an escrow and used to service the Sino-Hydro money. So far, out of the 2 billion, Sino-Hydro has given us a disbursement of $600 million. We speak now, not even an ounce of our bauxite or a ton of it had been processed. So we are back. So if you look for the first time, November report of the Bank of Ghana on our public debt shows that the total public debt today is 575 billion Ghana cedis. But it excludes Sino-Hydro and Dachin bond, Esla PLC bond.
So if you add all of those,
600 billion. Ghana cedis, that is our public debt. So this is a president who took our public debt from 122 by December 2016 to 600 billion.
so in your eyes, he has
Look, he has destroyed the economy through his recklessness. Look,
So you don't buy the arguments that we're doing fine till COVID came
I've
along?
read the IMF report to you. And this report is not generated by the NDC. Then you say, no, we are doing partisan politics. And you see, anytime the president wants to engage the IMF, he presents the true state of the economy to them. So in 2020, when he wanted a rapid credit facility of $1 billion, he had to say that, look, my deficit is not 5%, as I presented to the people of this country, by treating the below the line items, but it is actually 7.2%.
What did Mr. Nketia say
And
about...
Kafui, let me just quickly add this. By December 2020, COVID-19 year, December 2020, do you know that we're doing a budget deficit of 15.2%, the highest in the whole West Africa? Why do you think so? The reckless election expenditure. How is it Russia-Ukraine? How is it COVID-19?
What did the president say about COVID-19 in the State of the Nation? I have that, but did Mr. Nketia say anything about COVID-19?
Yes. That is why we're telling the president that It is not COVID that caused your budget deficit of 15.2%. It is your unbridled desire to win an election at all costs by making expenditure way out.
Let me read what the president said about COVID-19, and then we will get the video from your chairman who spoke yesterday. So the president in the State of Nations address on the 8th of March said, I thank those who contributed their expertise, time, and energy to the fight against the virus, and I thank those who contributed to the COVID-19 fund that was set up to help us meet some of the expenditures. The economic consequences from this pandemic have been devastating. Mr. Speaker, it is precisely because the economic fallout from the pandemic is so widespread and long-lasting that it's important to show clearly that the COVID funds were not misused. It is critical that we do not lose confidence of the people that a crisis that they were led to believe were all in together was abused for personal gain. And he continues by saying, Mr. Speaker, it was government that asked for the COVID-19 funds to be audited, and I can assure this House that nothing dishonorable was done with the COVID funds. The responses from the Ministers for Health and Finance on January 23 and 25, 2023, respectively, have sufficiently laid to rest the queries from the Auditor General's report, and I believe any objective scrutiny of these statements from the Health and Finance Ministries would justify this conclusion. I believe we do have Mr. Nketia speaking about the COVID-19 funds yesterday. Yes. We can put that up for you to hear what he said is the true state of the nation as far as the COVID-19 funds are concerned.
My brothers and sisters, another reason for Ghana's economic collapse is the expenditure on the bloated size of government. As has been revealed by our hard-working members of parliament, between January and September of 2022, the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia presidency wasted the taxpayers' money as follows. The president's operational enhancement expenditure, whatever that means, cost the suffering Ghanaian taxpayer a mind-boggling 59.4 million Ghana cedis. The fuel bills at the president alone cost the taxpayer 51.1 million Ghana cedis. President Akufo-Addo's regional tours last year cost 16.9 million Ghana cedis. Tires and batteries for official vehicles at the presidency alone cost Ghanaians 15 million Ghana cedis. A cabinet retreat, cabinet meeting outside Accra, cost the taxpayer a colossal 4.8 million Ghana cedis. Payment for new vehicles cost the suffering Ghanaian taxpayer 6.5 million, after Nana-Addo had declared that they will not purchase any new vehicles. Payment for networking and ICT equipment cost the Ghanaian taxpayer 6.6 million Ghana cedis. An amount of 10.4 million was spent on the Independence Day celebration in Cape Coast. 10 million for Independence Day celebration. An amount of 4 million was spent by the Vice President.
So that was a list of things that the government spent in their budget. There was a reference, we didn't get that, but there was a reference to amount of COVID. What was the reference that Mr.
So
about 30 million?
So COVID-19, that fiscal year, we got, contrary to what the budget had, provided, extra 30 billion Ghana cedis. And if you look at the breakdown, we did 1 billion rapid credit facility from the IMF. Then we did another 1 billion, that the special drawing rights allocation, also 1 billion. So within the COVID-19 year alone, we did additional $2 billion. If you look at the exchange rate at that time, and if you look at the fact that within that same COVID year, we went for $200 million from the stabilization fund, if you recall. Then the World Bank gave us 430 million Ghana cedis, dollars, sorry. Germany, 80, South Korea, 80 million. So if you put all these financial resources, it's even more than the $3 billion we are asking from the IMF today.
So your argument is that 30 billion CDs came to us. But I'm also reading from the audit of the COVID-19 transactions for the period of March 2020 to June 2022. And let me quote, the records of COVID-19 funds at the Ministry of Finance, Controller and Accountant General and Ministry of Health indicated the Ministry of Finance mobilized a total amount of 19.1 billion in 2020 to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. Records show that an amount of 1.9 billion was mobilized in 2021 and 753 million up to June 2022 to finance the coronavirus alleviation program and implementation of the Ghana COVID-19 emergency preparedness and response plan. In all, a total amount of 21.8 billion was mobilized to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in Ghana. Where is your 30 billion coming from?
So if you look at the same report, you notice that COVID-19 financial sources were 9 in all. The Auditor General provided only 6. The Auditor General provided only 6. And it's even important to make this point.
The other 3 no way.
Another question, no. Minua. Another question, no. In any case, the Auditor General only audited 11 billion out of the whole 30 billion. Because according to the Finance Minister, the greater part of that amount was used, interestingly enough, for budgetary support. What is that animal called budgetary support? By law, the District Assembly Common Fund is supposed to be a fraction of total revenue received in a year. Correct? This is statutory. So when you say you have used COVID-19 funds to give to district assemblies as part of District Assembly Common Fund allocation, quite clearly you've misapplied it. But you notice that the Auditor General didn't go into those areas. The Auditor General only focused on what Ministry of Health and those allied institutions use, and that's just 11 billion. So that's the point that we are making. That even the Auditor General did not audit the entire COVID-19 funds. In any case, he is an auditor. Is it not curious that an audit report is made? Parliament is here to debate or consider it. Then the president says, my appointees are above board. Clearing agents. Clearing agents. Even before the report will be considered, the president has concluded that his appointees are above board. But let's interrogate the details and see. The Auditor General says that over 500 million Ghana cedis of COVID expenditure did not go through GIFMIS.
What is GIFMIS for somebody who doesn't know?
Ghana Integrated Financial Management Information System. It is an IT system that automates government transactions.
And the reason is to ensure transparency and a certain higher level of accountability. Do you know that COVID-19 expenses, about 500 million of it didn't go through the same system set by the same finance minister? Granted that it is a process that started before him. But it is, you see, the Public Financial Management Regulation, if invariably mandates government expenses to go through GIFMIS. Why do you think almost 500 million Ghana cedis will be expended without going through GIFMIS? What is somebody hiding? Curiously, and again, he's an auditor. He will tell you that if it comes to audit GBC now, and all GBC expenses are evidenced by honor certificates, you start raising an eyebrow. So the Auditor General found as a fact that 11 million Ghana cedis was expended, and the evidence is honor certificates, like going to buy on tabletop.
Let me quote from the President's State of the Nation address what he said about. He says, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, let me state emphatically that we have not been reckless in borrowing and in spending. It is worth noting that the debts we are servicing were not only contracted during the period of this administration. Mr. Speaker, we have spent money on things that are urgent, to build roads and bridges and schools, to train our young people and equip them to face a competitive world. Considering the amount of work that still needs to be done on the state of our roads, the bridges that have to be built, considering the number of classrooms that need to be built, the furniture and equipment needs at all stages of education, considering the number of children who should be in school and are not, considering the number of towns and villages that still do not have access to potable water, I dare say no one can suggest we have over-borrowed or spent recklessly. End of quote. That's the president saying.
So you see,
Kafui, this is what he has not done.
You see, sometimes the problem with our president is that he forgets the things he said in the past. When Akufo-Addo wanted the mandate of the people of this country, he had a popular refrain in Akan. Yaye mobo dodo. Yaye mobo kura dodo. Yetisikaso eni ebre. Na Ghana yo nyamai.
To which?
Na amamu boni nti. Ghana is not a poor country. It is bad governance that had brought us to this place.
Do you agree?
That is why he used to say, even when we said no, that cannot be the case, he said no, because he needed a mandate. Now, when you move your public debt from 122 billion to 600 billion, you say we should clap for you. When you move our debt to GDP ratio from 56% to 103%, you say we should applaud you.
Maybe he can.
When you move inflation from 17% to 54%, you say we should applaud you.
Let
You move your exchange rate from 4.2% to 13%, you say we should applaud you.
Let me
How
read you.
ridiculous can you be?
Let me tell you let me read you some of what he says are his achievements, and then maybe that may give you answers to the questions that you are asking. So, still quoting from the SONA, March 8 by the president, he says, beyond the construction of roads, Mr. Speaker, this MPP administration has implemented successfully a national identification system with the Ghana card. Do you disagree?
The program started before he came and continued.
Governance is a continuation.
Yes, so there's no doubt about it.
Constructed more railways than any other government in the Fourth Republic.
Ridiculous claim.
What is your counterclaim?
Our president doesn't even know what he's talking about. By the time we left office, we had done Sekendi Kojokro railway line. We had done it. We went to India, got in the Indian Exim Bank to give us $398 million, brought AFCON, the Indian company called AFCON, to come and construct the road from the railway line from Tema to Mpakadan. Does the president know what he's talking about?
So, establish the Zongo Development Fund to address the needs of Zongo and inner city communities, and under the auspices, we have constructed more infrastructure in the Zongo communities than any other government in the Fourth Republic.
Ask him how much he has spent on this Zongo development.
I wish I could. He's not here.
That is why I'm saying that. You see, in public financial management, right? When you spend on capital expenditure, there is a ratio. That's your CAPEX ratio. What exactly is the CAPEX ratio? Look,
what is the optimum? What are the
you need to do beyond 5% continuously. You've been doing less than 3%. But you know even what is even shocking? In 6 years, our president has spent 10 billion Ghana cedis on roads. Right? 10 billion Ghana cedis on road. Meanwhile, he's gotten tax revenue in 6 years of 298 billion.
You wanted to spend all the money on roads?
No. He will come back and tell you that, free SHS. The total allocation on free SHS in 6 years, starting September 2017, is just 7 billion. Do you know how much oil 3 oil fields has given us? Out of our total oil revenue, 65% of our total revenue had accrued to Akufo-Addo alone.
So your argument here is he was well.
To whom much is given,
much is expected. Let me listen.
You are not in Legon Hall, right?
No. My vandals will not be happy for you to make an accusation
like
that.
It's just a question. It's a question. Because once you move to Legon Hall, it's right there. To whom much is given, much is expected.
We also have.
Don't worry.
So another achievement. It says constructed more NCA licensed fiber optic cable than any other government in the Fourth Republic.
Ridiculous. In fact, that's why I'm saying that whoever prepared his speech, look, we constructed the longest fiber optic, almost 900 kilometers from Accra right to the Eastern Corridor into the northern region.
Increase the population.
Do you know what the president presented as? When they license private people to do fiber optic construction, he claims as his this thing. Please.
Let me give you a couple more, and then we wrap this up. Increase the proportion of the population with access to toilet facilities from 33% to 59%. Increased the number of public libraries from 61 from independence until 2017 to 115 in 2022. Provided more equipment, vehicles, ammunition, etc. security services than any other government in the Fourth Republic. Successfully implemented the digital address system. Improved, you smile. What's funny?
You know,
This is telling what the president is telling you what he's achieved.
You see.
If you have any counter claims, I'd like to hear them.
You see, Kafui, let's be serious.
I am being serious. This is not a comedy show.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
but the
I'm
way
serious.
the president is going, let's be serious for once. See, let's elevate the conversation.
No, he's telling you what he's
No,
achieved.
I agree.
When you do a State of
That's
the
why
Nation
he has
address,
said.
you have to show
That
what
is
you've
why he
achieved.
has
And
said.
I didn't hear your counter
Yes,
argument.
and then I'm saying that, you see, this is a government that is so well resourced. The resources that have come into the hands of Mr. Akufo-Addo, mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And what does he provide as proof of his expenses? Do you know that curiously, we have spent more on consumption under the presidency of Akufo-Addo than on fiscal infrastructure? We have spent more on servicing our public debt by way of interest payment and amortization than any administration since 1992. I mean, so this is the evidence that we are saying that it is because of your reckless borrowing and expenditure. And the president said, no. If you are doing 53 billion Ghana cedis on interest payments and amortization, how can you even have any fiscal space for any other critical expenditure in the economy? Look, after this conversation, I'll plead with you. Call the CEO of National Health Insurance and ask him that in 2022, how much accrued under the National Health Insurance levy as a tax and how much was actually disbursed to him. Today, as we speak, the National Union of Ghana Students, NUCS, the minority, and many civil society groups are begging the finance minister to uncap Get Fund. Do you know why? We have gone for Dachi bonds in the name of coming to use it to finance educational infrastructure, and also introduce the capping and realignment legislation. Monies that are supposed to go into educational infrastructure, we put it in the pool of the consolidated fund. Money that are supposed to go to national health insurance, we put it in the consolidated fund. So national health insurance in 2021, whereas we raised 1.2 billion Ghana cedis from the levy, we did less than 300 million Ghana cedis by way of actual disbursement. Kafui, how can you run an economy like this? Kafui, the simple basic truth is that we've had a president together with his vice who have deliberately mismanaged the economy.
Are there no bright spots in this picture?
Do you know that as we speak, you know, just look at the so-called bright spot. We are now depending on China, the Paris Club of Lenders, creditors, to now agree to restructure component of our external debt in order to get an IMF program. But you know the Chinese are saying that, IMF, you are telling Ghana to come to us in order to restructure your debt. But you are not willing as an IMF to restructure the debt Ghana owes you. Where is the fairness in terms of the geopolitics?
The finance minister is in China now.
In fact, he left Addis Ababa to China. And what is he there to do?
Are you hopeful? Of
Nothing.
an
Because the Chinese are tough customers. The Chinese don't restructure debts.
What do they do?
See, Zambia has struggled to restructure its debt with China. So invariably, you know what China did? They said they will take your ports.
Okay, so negotiation.
And manage it and use it to offset. And you see, for the Chinese, they don't believe that, quote unquote, a country is broke. Because you've got to tell them that, oh, you have so much bauxite deposit. And then you say, no, the man should restructure your debt.
So
You will not.
what are you expecting the Chinese to take?
No, they'll say, no, then give us this, your bauxite. In lieu of this.
What will be our response?
How are you going to do that? When you don't know the value of what is underground, how are you going to do that in exchange? Because you see, already we have part of the CDB loan. Ghana Gas had paid most of it. The CDB loan, the 3 billion CDB facility. Then we have Sino Hydro and other monies. So if you look at our external debt of $5 billion, we owe China alone $1.5 billion, constituting 35%. That's huge. And we need them to agree in order to qualify. And you see, the IMF, the way the IMF program works, you have the staff agreement. The staff
Which
agreement.
is what we've agreed
yes,
here.
at the African level.
Okay.
So that staff agreement is put together and then now presented to the IMF board of directors. The fund had board of directors.
Is this what the NDC did when you had
yes.
to work with IMF?
So we have the
You
experience.
did okay.
So we went through
Were
with
you
the
were you
engagement of
consulted?
civil
Were
society.
you consulted?
You see?
The experience that you have, was it tapped into?
No.
Did you offer?
Yes, we're willing. In fact, we started, if you recall, H.E. John Dramani Mahama did a program, Ghana at the Crossroad, and said, look, from the numbers, we should be getting an IMF conversation a year earlier. Arrogance, impunity. When we even advised our finance minister to do an IMF program, he went on that one of the public forum and said, we are sovereign people. We are a proud people. We will not go to the IMF. We will not do this. Less than 2 months or 3, he was with the IMF. So it is that portion. Do you know that the World Bank president, Mapas, the one leaving, and you can check it on my jaw online, had indicated that Ghana had the opportunity to assess the IMF program, the World Bank program called the Debt Service Suspension Initiative, the DSSI. We did not do that.
Why
do you
not?
know? Because you see, by going for the DSSI, you need to reduce your borrowing. And let me submit that we have a situation where our finance minister notoriously was making money out of our borrowing. Notoriously. In a very notorious, and in fact, let me even point out that I've never seen that level of it. Where your finance minister, anytime you borrow, his company profits from it. And so, even though there were programs and policies and others that we could sign on to, but then the condition is that you must reduce your borrowing. That would mean reducing his source of making money.
So,
So when you have an individual put his private interest above that of the generality, you invariably now come like the prodigal son to your father again. And this time, pensioner bondholders to plead with them. How did we get here? The most resourced government, the most resourced, the kind of money that had come to Akufo-Addo, no government since 1992 had gotten that.
how confident are you, as we wrap this up, that the president will revise his sooner that you wish that he would do because of your true State of the Nation address, as you claim?
You see, and before I even answer that, he is here. He's a financial person. The Bank of Ghana is established by an act of parliament, correct? Mm-hmm. So, in 2003, under President Kufuor, we had the Bank of Ghana Act. That's Act 612. If you look at Section 30 of Act 612, it says that the Bank of Ghana, and it has been amended by the Bank of Ghana Amendment Act 918. Now, if you read the law, it says that the total loans, advances that the Bank of Ghana can give to government of Ghana should not exceed 5% of the previous year total revenue. Kafi, do you know that consistently from 2019, and in fact by 2020, we're doing no less than 10 billion borrowing from Bank of Ghana to central government. Look, in 2020, the Bank of Ghana gave central the Akufo-Addo administration 10 billion. In 2021, guess how much? 43 billion Ghana cedis. Print money and give. 2022, 50 billion. As I speak to you, from January to March, 4 billion. Print money and put into the system for government. One, the Bank of Ghana recklessly...
Is it illegal?
Yes.
Who should be arrested?
That is a conversation for another day. Because the act is very clear.
You just said it's illegal.
It's very clear. So why do you think the board of the Bank of Ghana and others will recklessly violate the laws of this country?
So you want things to change. You want people to...
So
to
if we are saying that the state of the nation, but you see, the most important thing, let me link it to something. Do you know why today we have inflation of almost 52%? Do you know why? When Bank of Ghana print this kind of money into the system, from economics, productivity must correspond with this. But because productivity is not corresponding with it, you're going to have a situation where a lot of money will be chasing fewer products.
I heard this term in economics, chasing the money and just, what is the money chasing the goods for? Man?
Basic, right?
Has it caught the money? Has it caught the goods?
Yes.
Basic.
Has the money caught the goods? Or is it chasing?
So you have a situation where there's so much money. So the latest Bank of Ghana, money in circulation shows that it has increased by 51%. Now, when you have a situation where you've printed so much money into the system, you're going to have high inflation. And in this case, hyper. 52%. It's not a joke. So, you as an individual, do you know how this had impacted on you? Monies that ordinarily you would save, it's now being taken away from you by way of inflation. And you see, for a typical Ghanaian, if you look at the study, your marginal propensity to consume, as against your marginal propensity to save, is always higher. When you have money, you want to spend. You don't want to save.
The days of Dr. Tutu on the University of Ghana campus.
Exactly.
Marginal propensity and all that stuff.
Yes. So if you look at the dynamics, we consume more than those like the savings. So immediately the Bank of Ghana is put into that reckless mode where it is beginning to print money into the system. In America, they call it quantitative easing, right?
QE, yeah.
Yes. If you have such kind of situation, you're going to have these economic indicators.
So the upshot of all this conversation, I mean, we've looked at the State of the Nation's address delivered by the President, and then your National Chairman, Mr. Johnson Asiedu Nketiah's true State of the Nation's address. What next? Some people have, I've heard people say that, oh, this was just there to ginger your supporters ahead of the former president going to put his...
but the last time I checked, the one who delivered it, the speech is not one of the candidates.
No, yeah, but
it's
just to ginger your people, your supporters.
You see.
It's not?
By October last year, John Dramani Mahama did what we call the Ghana We Want program at UPSC and listed a few things that this government should do. And when I'm done, Kapwe, I'll forward some documents to you. For the 2023 budget to be approved for the office of the president, the chief of staff had to present a detailed account of how they spent monies allocated to the office of the president.
And that's how come your chairman listed some
so
of the posts.
I have the details. So
we have it.
Exactly. Yeah. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. So that is where the money is going to. Look, Kafui, if we are able to tweak a little bit of our public finances, a lot of these things there will be a reset. And that is what we are calling for. Now, Kafui, with the greatest respect, these conversations and the things that we are raising, like I pointed out, if you are doing inflation at 52%, you don't know that they are taking money from your pocket. Because something that ordinarily you'll be buying for 2 cedis, you are buying it now for 4 cedis. So that's money that is being taken by reason of government's reckless mismanagement of the economy.
So you want them to take your advice? I'm sure they are listening, and I'm sure there will be responses.
Would Akufo-Addo listen?
Well, they are listening.
No, because you see, we have provided this platform and a lot of it. And I've always maintained, look, before we did the IMF program in March 2015, if you recall vividly, we did a century. At that point, we invited the MPP. In fact, Nana Osaf Mafo agreed to attend together with Kwan Peni. Then the NPP said no, they would boycott it. So Mr. Yaosaf Mafo, who had agreed earlier, had to what? Withdraw from. But what it did is that it provided us a platform to tap into the knowledge and expertise of experienced people. Kwan Peni, with all his experience, with the gravitas, the person he is, he agreed to attend the program. The NPP said no.
Did he attend?
Who?
Mr. Penny?
Yes, he was there.
He was there. Eduji, I wish I could speak more with you on these, but we have to wrap it up. It's a big week as we're wrapping up for two of your presidential hopefuls. Today, Mr. Mahama will submit his forms at your party.
Most definitely.
And then on Thursday, Dr. Dufour will do the same.
That is correct. And I'm inviting GBC and the whole platform. Tomorrow, there is going to be a program at UPSA on political funding of political parties, innovative ways of doing that.
Who are the speakers?
Well, various embassies.
Okay, so
and,
stakeholders.
Yes, so
All right.
please do well to attend and pick the feet. I've always trusted GBC. And now, in law school, MPP versus GBC.
That's right.
Were you classmates?
No, he's my partner.
All right.
But
Okay.
it's one of the cases that you must definitely do.
You must definitely
You
do.
must
So
definitely
he has
read
your wig is older than his wig.
much older.
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Osai, please stay with me. Eduji Tamaklo is a member of the communication and legal team of the National Democratic Congress, and they were talking about, we were getting insights onto the true state of the nation's address that their chairman delivered yesterday. Thank you so much, Eduji. Have a victorious day, as your name suggests. Akbamelio.